What makes a good business plan? This is for the entrepreneurship program at Gateway Technical College. We look at what makes a good business plan. Certain things we have to look at when we're writing the plan, and some things we have to identify before we get started. The number one thing that we need to look at is this idea of honesty. Previously we talked about what the purpose of the business plan was, and when we talked about the purpose of the business plan, we looked at this idea that it was going to give us a snapshot or a look of the feasibility of our business. If we're not honest about the information we're putting into the plan, then feasibility just isn't going to happen. And the document we have is going to become worthless. In accounting terms, we use the term garbage in, garbage out. And so if the information you're putting in is garbage, the information that you kick out is going to be garbage. Do you have justification? Meaning, do you justify the information that's inside this plan? Is it explained, or is it just kind of thrown up there, this is going to happen because? We need to get very detailed when we talk about the steps and actions inside the plan. We want to make the assumption, we'll talk about this several times, we want to make the assumption that the person reading the plan knows nothing about the business that this plan is documenting. And so there's certain assumptions that we want to make sure that we don't make. We want to make sure that we don't add puffery. The business plan isn't a place for you to oversell your business. It needs to be a logically laid out document. Along the same lines of no puffery, we want to make sure that it's realistic. Is the information laid out, and specifically are the projections, are they realistic for your business? And part of that realistic piece goes back to how you justify those numbers. Does the plan itself, how it's laid out, how it looks, how it feels, the English and the verbiage used inside of the plan, does it project a professional image? Nothing will hurt your image more than grammatical errors, typos, coffee stains, etc. We look at 10 keys to a good business plan. We're going to break each one of these down specifically. And so we talk about being specific, being realistic, how well are the responsibilities laid out. We want to make sure that nothing is left for interpretation. We want to make sure that English, grammar, and layout follows proper business reporting guidelines. We want to make sure that it's not written like a novel. We want the information to be concise and to the point. We make sure that it is easy to navigate. We want to identify that our business isn't that unique. We make sure that the management team is identified and that controls and evaluations are in place. We talk about 10 keys. The first one we're going to look at is this idea that the information within the plan is specific. And so when we talk about what we mean by specific, one big area, one general area that a lot of businesses make mistakes is that they're too vague in the details of the plan. A lot of problems that business owners have is, even if they've been operating a business for a long period of time, or if this is something they've been thinking about for a long period of time, there's assumptions in their heads that they think of. And so there's a lot of times there's things that we think is common knowledge that we don't put in the plan. We have to go on this idea and thought process that, let's say we're opening up a restaurant, that the person reading the plan has no idea how a restaurant operates. And so we need to make sure that we are detailed and specific enough that after you read this, you have a good understanding of how the day-to-day operations are going to be like. And so, again, that last point, we assume this person knows nothing about the type of business you're opening, because in some situations, they may not. We want to make sure that this is realistic, that we can identify where these costs and projections are coming from. This is the only way we can truly determine a business's feasibility. is if we are realistic with these financial numbers. Sometimes we won't like what those numbers kick out. But through this business planning process, we need to identify, do I need to make modifications? We want to know that now versus being open, losing money, and trying to recoup that. You don't have to be overly profitable. You don't even have to make profit your first year. A lot of businesses lose money their first year. There's a lot of capital costs that may be involved your first year that you're not going to have in other years. And again, let's look at a restaurant. Think about all the equipment you have to purchase to open a restaurant that you don't purchase every single year. If you need walk-in coolers, if you need fryers, if you need grills, you don't replace those every year. And so your chances of success your first year, not only do you have high levels of outflow in regards to costs of expenditures, you're developing your business, so your marketing dollars might be higher, and you're not going to have a constant flow of business in the beginning, and so your sales will be lower than hopefully they are year 2 or year 3. So your chances of success year 1 is going to be limited. Bankers have different ratios for each individual industry, and so they're going to compare their ratios to your ratios and understand, oh, they're not even close. What isn't realistic about these numbers? A lot of times business owners feel, I've got to be profitable. I have to show profit. We want to see profit because we want to make sure you can pay back your loan. But it's also understood that not every business is going to be profitable their first year. Next, we're going to look at this area of responsibilities. Are the people who will be executing tasks been clearly identified? Have their backgrounds and experiences of these people been identified, including vendors? And so who's going to be working for the business, and who are your vendors? It's specifically, I'm looking at this idea of attorney and accountant. There's certain areas where we want to pay someone to do something. I always get very concerned when the business owner says, well, I will do my own accounting. The only time I would say that would be a great idea is if you were a CPA and you were opening up a CPA firm. That would make sense for you to do your own accounting. There's so many tasks for you to do as a business owner. You can't possibly be able to do all of them. And when I talk about legal issues and accounting issues, and you're talking about reporting to the IRS, and you're talking about the multitude of law changes that affects accounting on a yearly basis, you want to pay someone to do that. You might be saving a nickel here or there, but you're going to be costing yourself dollars, and lots of dollars in the long term of trying to do those type of items yourself. It's important that you understand how to read accounting balance sheets and how to interact with it, but for you to handle all your accounting may be a bit of a challenge for you to accomplish. The next thing we need to look at are the balanced responsibilities equal. Again, getting back to this idea, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to do everything. The biggest challenge for an entrepreneur is being able to delegate and take their hands off of things. We're going to look at the evaluation of what your day-to-day responsibilities are going to be. Are you going to be able to do everything? Are you going to be able to get customers, perform the work, do the accounting, take out the garbage, sweep the floors? Are you going to be doing all of that? Hiring staff, training staff. When you start looking about all the different individual responsibilities that come into play here, we need to make sure that you're realistic to what you're able to handle yourself. With the same piece of understanding that you need to have a life outside of this thing. We talk about interpretation. We want to make sure that when someone reads the document, they should be able to understand a couple things. Number one, This may seem a silly thing to put in there, but they understand what the name of the business is. They understand the location, the industry the business is, the competitive advantage of the business, and most importantly, who's really responsible for this business, and how our actions and activities are going to take place. We don't want people to make assumptions. And so we eliminate assumptions by making sure everything is very detailed and laid out inside the plan. When we talk about the keys of the layout of the plan, first and foremost, your plan needs to have a cover page and a table of contents. It's essential when you have a table of contents to put page numbers. It seems like an easy concept to explain, but I've seen a lot of plans that end up having a table of contents with no page numbers. It's like having a map with no street names. The plan is not going to be read cover to cover. And so people are going to be looking for specific pages of the plan. And so we want to make sure that we clearly identify what page each section of that plan is on. We want to make sure the fonts are easy to read. This isn't the place for you to be creative. Right? And so you want to use like a Times New Roman, a font that's easy for you to read. It should follow traditional business reporting guidelines. Page numbers, if you're going to put page numbers on the table of contents, you also need to put page numbers on the individual pages of the plan. Each page should have a page number. Margins should stay consistent. If you're going to use charts and graphs, use them where it makes sense. You want to make sure that you identify each chart and graph. You may have a table of charts and graphs which identifies which pages each chart and or graph is going to be on. We want to make sure that all of this, the formatting each page, lays out fairly consistently. We want to make sure that the information provided is concise. The information should be concise and to the point. You don't want the information to be overly wordy. You want to realize that the document will not be read from front to back. And so people are going to be looking for specific information. Again, this isn't a novel where it's a continuing story from chapter to chapter. We want to make sure that the information in each section is very concise. I may only be looking for specific pieces of information. This information is going to be scanned and searched for. And so someone be viewing it may look at your financials and say, okay, they say the first month they're going to spend $20,000 in marketing. I want to be able to go to the marketing section of the business plan and be able to easily find out what you're spending that $20,000 on. How easy is it to navigate and find information? This ties back into your first step of that is some of those layout features we just talked about. But you want to make something where either you've got it in a binder or you've got tabs where people can flip through and find the information. Again, can't stress this enough, the pages should be numbered. Headers should be used to identify each section. And charts should be easy to read and to identify. If you're using colors, make sure your colors make sense. Another important piece of making sure you've got a quality business plan is understand one truth about your business. It's not unique. I've read plan over plan over plan where you'll say competitive analysis. I don't have any competitors. You might offer a product or service maybe a little bit different than someone else, but you have competitors. It's the truism. When Redbox first started, there wasn't a lot of, if any, vending machines that did DVDs. That doesn't mean that they didn't have any competitors. Where else could they purchase that product from? You had online streaming, you had large big box stores like Blockbuster, Family Video, you may have independents, you might have also being able to purchase it, you've got cable boxes, so you may not have had what you would consider a direct competitor that was this idea of another vending machine system, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you didn't have any competitors. And so you want to make sure that you realize you do have competition. There's information out there about your markets and industry. You just need to find that information. There's plenty of nonprofit organizations, 501c3 industry-related organizations that serve a multitude of industries. There's going to be one for your industry. Your management team. You want to make sure you identify who is in your management team. This includes yourself as a business owner. Why are you in the management team? Why should a bank or an investment company give you the amount of money that you're looking for to run this business? Have you communicated to them enough that you are competent enough in the area of running this business that you should be allowed to do it? They're not going to say, "Oh, I'm Joe Smith, I'm going to run this business. What experience do you have?" Well, I really don't have any. I just want money to run this business. They're not going to give that person any money. Right? You need to share what your experiences is and why you're important to that piece. And if you're bringing additional other people into your management team, it's also important to share their experiences and why they should be part of this business team. If you're the only person in your management team, you need to identify, why do you think this is going to work? They will be concerned if you're the only person in your management team, you're the only employee, you're the only one doing everything. That's going to draw some red flags, because through their experience, they know that that business owner is going to get stretched too thin in that circumstance. And so you really need to identify why that process is going to work. And then we got to look at the controls, an evaluation piece. This is a piece a lot of people miss. How are you going to track your progress on your goals? What are the things you are going to be able to identify and track for this business plan? You are setting financial goals. We're going to ask you to do financial goals for 1 year, 3 year, and 5 years. At one point in time, you're going to say, okay, let me look at where I'm at and compare. You're going to do it the first quarter? What if your sales are down 35% below what you thought they were going to be? Making your initial financial projections is going to be the most difficult thing you have to do. And the reason why I say it's going to be the most difficult thing you have to do is because of one specific truth. You've got nothing to balance this off of, meaning you don't have last year's sales. For anyone who's worked in retail, we all know retail really gets very excited about comparing sales over last year. And that's how they do the projections. And so if you're an existing business, you can say, okay, every year I want to increase sales 10%. And so I can say, okay, today's September 18th. All right, September 18th last year I did $3,000 in sales. So this year I want to do $3,300. At the end of the day, I can say, how close was I to $3,300? When you're a new business, you don't have that to bounce off of. And so a new business owner, it's very important for them to constantly check those numbers. If I'm seeing a trend where I was way off, I'm 30% off, how are you going to justify that? Because your financial projections were based off of that income. And so if you're 30% off in income, that means you got to either do something to get your income up to the level you wanted it at, or you're going to have to reduce your outflows or your expenses by 30%. And so we need to identify what controls we're going to have in place to evaluate these goals. And then, do you have steps predetermined in place of how you are going to reach these individual goals? And so, if you see sales are down, what's going to be your first step, your second step, or third step? And so the idea of the business plan is to identify and manage your risks.